So this is called Living Life Without an Agenda. Every Thursday, I get to speak at a addiction recovery home that's run in association with my church, and I speak to a group of 20 guys or so, and we've been going through different series. We started with a series on friendships. Who do you surround yourself with? Who influences you? Then we moved on to a series on money, managing money God's way. And today we're going to talk about the cycle of wealth and the cycle of poverty, and I was ready to talk about that. And before I got into that, I felt compelled. Not so focused on the destination that I just went in and talked about the thing I was planning to talk about, but realizing that I felt compelled to talk about this idea about when God says, wait, what should we do? And so from John chapter 11, I talked about how Jesus waited to go to Bethany to raise Lazarus from the dead. And as I planned on talking about it for 5 minutes and then jumping right into the talk on the money piece. And as I'm talking about it, the guys are getting engaged and asking questions, and it's an open discussion. It's not just me talking about it, it's an open discussion. And as I'm talking and talking and talking, I get to this point about 25 minutes in. I have an hour. 25 minutes in where I realize I can either keep this conversation going because we're right in the middle of the conversation. But if I do that, then we're not going to talk about the thing that I was planning on talking about. Or I can just hit pause on the thing that I was planning on talking about it, talk about it next week, and just go with the conversation and what comes up next. And what was going to come up next, I didn't know. I was in the process, in the journey, in the progress, just willing to take a step and see where it went. So we had 30 or 35 minutes left in the hour. And so we filled the entire conversation, asking questions, talking, bringing up Bible verses, just talking about what is it like in the difficult situations when God doesn't seem to be giving us the answer we want. And I came in with an agenda, loosely held enough that I was able to give it up and let go of it when I realized it wasn't serving the specific situation. Then afterwards, I was talking to one of the guys who shared a lot of what was going on in his life. And he said, I'm really glad you didn't talk about what you were planning on talking about today because I needed to hear what we talked about today. He goes, I was right on the edge of about just wanting to quit and leave this program. And I really needed to hear what you said today. And I realized in that moment, this idea about holding an agenda tightly enough that it gives me direction if I need it, and loosely enough to change it if it's not serving the way that I thought it was going to serve along my journey. If I had been so sold on completing the money series, because today was supposed to be the last day of the money series, I would have missed an entire opportunity to reach this man's heart and help him to stay in the program. It's usually a 12-month program, and he's been there for maybe 6 weeks. So this is a big deal. And then I want to zoom out and invite you and invite me to, on a much broader scale in life, live life without an agenda. And it's not completely without an agenda. I think we would be foolish. I think we would not be good stewards of the time, the talents that God has given us, to not have a plan of what to do with them. But it's about how tightly we hold on to them. And I say we, I'm going to say me. I'm going to be really, really personal here. It's about how tightly I hold on to that agenda. Am I so sold on getting to that destination that I felt a year or 5 or 10 years ago that it was supposed to get me to where I wanted to go, that I'm not willing to shift gears in the middle of my journey if I feel that's where God is leading me? I'm 37 years old. I've heard this term midlife crisis a lot of my life, and I didn't really understand what a midlife crisis was. And it really doesn't matter, but this is the idea that comes up, and we choose careers in our 20s. And maybe at some point, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 30 years down the road, God has an idea to shift our career. If God were to do that, am I willing to let go of this career that I chose before and shift to a whole different path that God called me to, the career that I chose, for example, has given me a really good destination, or at least direction to follow. It's given me a lot of purpose, and it served me very well, served my family very well. I'm able to provide for my family and give and do other things because of that career. And, not but, and I need to hold it loosely enough that if God says, Derek, I want you to shift, I'm willing to shift. I think about our fostering journey. We started fostering a year and a half ago. It was maybe, and Katie and I had talked about this, the desire to foster, I think, for years, and we had always decided now's not the time, now's not the time, now's not the time. But we didn't say now's not the time. We didn't hold on to that as the be-all and end-all. That was enough of a direction to hold on to and say now's not the time for fostering until we let go of that agenda because it wasn't God's will for us, and we chose to get into fostering. And this fostering journey has been completely different than we planned. We had a direction that we thought fostering would look like. And it gave us direction to get started, and it gave us direction to keep going at the beginning, and we've realized that God had a different plan for us. And without sharing all the details, we've had to realize that the agenda that we held on to, the plan that we held on to, was good to get us started and keep us going at the beginning, and we've needed to let go of that and trust God in the journey. It really is living Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will, not maybe, he will direct your paths. He will direct my paths. That verse doesn't absolve me from making plans. That verse doesn't absolve me from putting my feet in a certain direction and say, this is the direction I believe that God wants me to go. But what it challenges me, invites me, compels me to do is when I choose a path to go, recognize that better be the path that God is showing me. And if God decides to change my path, bam, I need to let go of the path, that direction, like that, and go where God leads me. It is this tension between trusting God and realizing that there are actions that I need to take as God leads. And as God leads, changing direction. It's about holding on to a destination that God shows you tightly enough to move that direction, and loosely enough that when he says it's time to change directions, I can let go of it. Tightly enough to move toward it, loosely enough to change it when I need to. I got to reach a guy's heart today. And I never said to him, you need to stay in this program. But because I was willing to live life without an agenda, I was willing to go into that meeting with an agenda and without an agenda, if you understand what I'm saying. This guy's going to stay in the program another day, another week. And I hope he completes it. And I know if he completes it, it's in part because I was willing to walk in there with an idea of what I wanted to say and ready to recognize that that may not be what we need to talk about.